All right, let's go ahead and start sculpting this honey badger. That's a mean-looking honey badger. Okay, it's not, it's not a honey badger, but the honey badger is a bad animal. I think the honey badger could take on this creature, honestly. Honey badgers are bad. All right, so let's get right to it. Now, this sculpt, you can see that the image, and I was going to make the image symmetrical, meaning that it lines up, but you could see that this image is asymmetrical, meaning that the back leg right here is not the same as the leg right here, and this front leg is back as well, and this one is forward. So how do we go about that? Because obviously when we were sculpting before on the fish, we had the x-axis mirror so that when we sculpt on one side, it sculpts on the other side, and we don't have to redo things twice, which obviously is not good. We want to be efficient and lazy and efficient mainly. But here, since his back leg is going there and this back leg is going like that, we can't really have the x-axis mirror for sculpting because the legs are going to be completely different in completely different places. So it won't be mirroring on the x-axis on the sculpt. So one way to do it is to just do dynamic topology, turn off the X mirror, and do both sides one at a time. Now, that's not very efficient because, well, it's not. You have to redo it twice. Also, it might not look exactly the same, etc., etc. So we're going to do it a different way, and it will also teach you some really cool sculpting techniques because we're going to be modeling or sculpting out or blocking out the major parts of the body and then joining them with a Boolean modifier or the bool tool later on to merge them together. But what this will allow for us to do is to have duplicated legs or appendages, and when we sculpt on one, it will sculpt on the other one even if it's in a different position. Aha, super sweet. So to do this, first let's block out our sculpt. Now, what we could do is, again, since we're doing it this way of different body parts and then joining them later, we're going to be using several different objects. But even if, let's say we were just sculpting this one side at a time. Well, one way you could do your sculpt is like we do with the fish. We could just start with a cube and turn on dynamic topology and then just start sculpting and laying out the shape of it. Another way you could do your sculpting is first block this out. So block out the overall mesh of it or the overall shape of it. So you could go into edit mode of your cube and kind of draw out a low poly version of this so that then you could start sculpting on that one and you have a rough shape of it. We'll probably do that in the next sculpt. However, in this one, because it's asymmetrical, meaning the thing is not, symmetrized exactly, this leg is different than that leg, etc., as I already said, we're going to do it this way. So we're going to have several different body parts. Yes, we've torn him apart into different body parts. Sounds painful. All right, the first thing we need to do is hit tab to go into edit mode. And what's very important in this, let me go over this quickly. If we go to the object data right here and under viewport display, you can see that we have the option axis right there. And you can see that the axis, let me hide these images. Select both of them, hit the H key. You can see the axes on here. Axes, axis, axes. No, I'm just kidding. You can see the axes on here are X, Y, and Z. And this is based on the origin point of your cube. If you hit R twice or just R, you can see that the axis is changing depending on your cube. Now, in object mode, when you rotate an object, the axis will rotate with it because it's being based on the origin point. If you rotate something in edit mode, you can see that the axis or the axes do not change. The axes stay the same. So that's very important. Keep that in mind. Now, when something's rotated in edit mode, they don't change. When they're rotated in object mode, they do change. Now, another thing is global and local axes. If right now we're set to global axes, and if we turn on the manipulator right here, the move manipulator, you can see the Z, X, and Y axes like that. If we change this to, if we hit R twice and tumble rotate this, it's still global. It's no longer, it's still going based off of these axes right here, the global ones. However, these right here, the other axes, are being local axes. If we change it to local right here, you can see that the local axes are Z, Y, and X. And the local axis is basically the axis perpendicular to the origin point and the shape of the object, but perpendicular to the origin point. So depending on how you rotate it, it will rotate the local axis. I'm going to hit Alt-R to clear that. And let's change this back to global. And change this back to selection menu right there. And we could also turn off axes. All right, so let's hit Alt-H to unhide that. 3 to go into side view. And right here, we're just going to block this out quickly. Now, I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. And before I change the shape of this, I'm going to hit Shift-D and duplicate this cube just so that we have a part for the leg. Now, for the body, I'm just going to hit Tab to go into edit mode. Hit SY, scale it up on the Y-axis. And I'm just going to hit R to rotate. We could hit Z to go into wireframe, S to scale. And I'm going to hit Control-R, add in 5 loop cuts. So hit the 5 key on your keyboard. And then right here, we could just grab these vertices, left click and drag, and boom, just align them very roughly. Again, we're not going to use the reference image that much. So right here, I'm lining it up to the neck. And right here, just kind of like that. So a very rough alignment like so. So it looks basically like that. Again, very, very rough. We're just kind of blocking it out. And right here, maybe bring it further. This is going to be like the belly. All right, sweet. You're probably thinking, Alex, what the heck? Now, what we want to do is we want to go ahead and make the limbs as separate parts of the body. To do that, we're going to select this cube right here, hit Tab to go into edit mode, and actually first we're going to hit Control-2. Control-2 is going to add a subdivision surface modifier level of 2. And we could go over here to the modifiers tab. You can see that in 2.9 they're slightly different. At first I was like, where is the apply button? Well, the apply button is under this little drop down arrow now. You could apply them right here. So now we want to create this top limb right here for the leg. I'm going to go ahead and select this body part right here and hit the H key just to hide that for now. So we want to create this part of the leg here. And again, we are just blocking it out. So we're trying to make it look as bad as possible. No, I'm just kidding. But what we're going to do is select this, hit Tab to go into edit mode, SX, why do I keep hitting SX? SY, and scale it up on the Y axis. And then what we want to do is in object mode, make sure you're in object mode, grab this, put it to right here, and then in edit mode, we're going to hit the S key and scale it down. Now, making sure the origin point is still there because we moved it in object mode. Now what we want to do is we want this to rotate around the hinge of the leg where it would rotate. So around right here. I'm going to hit Tab to go into edit mode, G, Y, and bring it over here in edit mode again, because remember the origin point doesn't move when you're in edit mode. So now if we go back to object mode, check it out, the origin point should be there. And then we can move it back to here. So now that top part of the leg rotates like that. And in fact, let me bring it a little bit more in right there. So it rotates like that. Pretty sweet. All right, sweet. So now what we want to do is we want to go ahead and hit Shift-D to duplicate this, and then R to rotate it, and we're going to duplicate it as this part of the leg right there, and making sure that intersects. Of course, we could hit Tab to go into edit mode, Z, go into wireframe, and select these parts right here. Let me go back in solid view so you can see, and hit the S key to scale that down a little bit, and we could bring it to there. All right, sweet. And then we could also, in wireframe, just grab these a little bit and move it just a tiny bit. So now we basically have these two shapes right there. Like I said, looks absolutely horrible, which is perfect. All right, nice. And then lastly, we need to duplicate this one more time for this last part of the foot with the heel and the foot part. So I'm going to hit Shift D in object mode, still in side view, R to rotate, put this right here. And once again, we can hit Tab to go into edit mode, Z, go into wireframe, and just select these vertices right there. And scale them down, making sure I have all of them selected. Yep, scale them down like that. Pretty sweet. You're like, Alex, this is not the sculpting course I wanted, but the sculpting course I needed. I know, you're welcome.